FP, Steph Curry, or not, it's not Steph Curry, Brandin Podziemski was in the Rising Stars game during this All-Star weekend. I don't know if you caught any of the Rising Stars game at all. I think that was on Friday night.
I did not.
Yeah, I mean, it's watching anything during NBA All-Star weekend is tough these days. But Brandin Podziemski, after the Rising Stars practice, I thought put some like incredible pressure on himself about being the guy who succeeds Steph Curry's role with the Warriors. Here's what he had to say about that.
You know, he did a really good job of the first day I was a Warrior, just reaching out and FaceTiming me and talking with me, just kind of opened that relationship up to start. And, you know, he's been a great vet towards me. And anything I've ever needed on the court, off the court, he's been there to take care of me. So, you know, super appreciative and thankful for that. But, you know, when he retires and how many years that may be, I feel like it's my job to fulfill, you know, what he's doing.
So hearing a guy like Brandin Podziemski, he's a rookie out of Santa Clara, not a very heralded rookie coming into this year. He was kind of bumpy at the beginning of the year, but he's really endeared himself to Warrior fans as this season's gone on. Hear him come out and say that, yeah, he kind of wants that to fill that Steph Curry role. FP, when you hear a guy like that want to take up that kind of a role, what's your first thought when you hear him say something like that?
Well, I love the confidence that he has, but it's not arrogance. I love the swagger that he plays the game with. I love how hard he plays the game of basketball every single night. In that Rising Stars game you're talking about, his quotes after the game that he was shocked that people were on that kind of a stage and they didn't give an effort. It blew him away. The G League players did, he said, but like the Rising Star rookies in the NBA didn't. And he said, we have to care more. I'm like, what? I love everything about this kid. He's the guy that I go to the games to watch besides Steph, Clay, and Dre right now. And when you talk about the Warriors went to Santa Clara to scout somebody else, and then they saw Podziemski and they said he's a number one pick. When you saw that, you know, he had a lackluster summer league, but who cares? But he came into camp talking trash. Like this guy, even Draymond says he talks S all day. That's all he do. Like, I love a guy that exudes that kind of confidence. And he's walking the talk, too. And when you talk to Steve Kerr, we interview him every week here on our air. That's his guy. Like, he loves that guy because he's a basketball player. He's a gym rat. He's diving on the floor. He's boxing out. He's rebounding. He's running the offense. He's taking the open jumpers. There's nothing. I had no idea about this kid. And now he's one of my favorite Warriors to watch play. Not because of his talent level, but I love the confidence that he knows his game plays at any level. Maybe he didn't know that at first, but we've got to watch him grow up this year a lot like Kuminga. Kuminga changed in 1 month, like when you see guys change in 3 years, like because he believes in himself. And at the highest level, you have to have the belief in your ability that, hey, my game plays. Can you imagine being a rookie in the NBA on any team? But can you imagine being a rookie in the NBA with Steph Curry right there and Klay Thompson right there? Arguably the two greatest shooters, not even arguably, the two greatest shooters that have ever played in the NBA, and a team with 4 rings, and maybe at certain venues and certain occasions and get-togethers, they put the rings on. Like, you get called up to the Pittsburgh Pirates, okay. You get called up to the New York freaking Yankees, that's a whole different story. Like, Brandin Podziemski got called up to the most internationally known franchise in NBA right now. And he's playing like he's been there for 5 years. This guy's amazing. And for him to say that he wants to take over, I want him to say that. I want him to say he wants to be a Hall of Famer. I want him to say he wants to be an All-Star, which he said during All-Star weekend. Like, these are goals that confident players should all have. But he's not in your face like, oh my God, this guy. He just goes out and balls out every single night. He's 20 years old. Like, he's not even legal yet, I think. I don't think he's 21 yet.
No, I think we probably pull that up.
Right?
Yeah,
he can't even have a beer with his teammates.
No, he can't.
And he has this confidence. I love the kid. I love where the Warriors are going. They're 1 game over 500. They've won 8 out of 10. They're playing with a different energy, a different passion, a different synergy than they had early in the season. And we could talk about Steve Kerr, and a lot of people like to question Steve Kerr. At the end of this thing, I don't think you're always judged by having a parade. Sometimes your best job as a coach is getting your team through the adversity of a coach dying, getting your team through a suspension of one of your best players, getting your team through choppy waters. Like, sometimes bumpy roads lead to beautiful places. And this road for Steve Kerr as a coach this year has been super bumpy. And all of a sudden, they're starting to come out on the other side of that. Mm-hmm. Where this goes, are they going to break our hearts and take 1 step forward, 2 steps back like they have all year? I don't know. But like, there's a lot of it talk about, is Steve Kerr the coach for the Warriors in the future? Absolutely. He might be doing, people are going to roll their eyes in traffic right now, his best job as a coach this year, because it's not always about rotations and this and that. It's about getting men through tough times. It's about standing up and being a leader when Coach Decky died and addressing your team. It's about talking to your team about Draymond Green. It's about Kuminga going public with, I want to play more. Like he has navigated and negotiated this team through a tough time times 10 this year.
Yeah.
If I'm Steve Kerr at the end of the year and I go deep into the playoffs, I might smoke a big fat cigar, drink a bottle of champagne, and say, you know what? This is my best year as a head coach in the NBA.
Yeah, and I like what you say there, especially is criticisms I've heard a lot of Steve Kerr in the past is a lot of people like to get on him saying that they like to criticize his X's and O's. Shasky and I, we've had lots of conversations about, the plays that Steve Kerr will draw up coming out of a timeout, and the issues he has there, his issues with the rotations, the issues with getting Kuminga or Moody into the lineup. I was at the game, a few weeks ago when during the game you started having Moses Moody chants in the crowd because fans are just so frustrated with Steve Kerr's apparent refusal to play Moody for the Warriors. Speaking of the Warriors, just want to remind everyone it is a Warriors Wednesday, which is brought to you by Freedman's Appliance, a trusted name since 1922. Visit freedmansappliance.com today. But I agree with you kind of in the wake of Coach Decky's passing. One of Kerr's biggest strengths as a head coach has always been his ability to manage people, manage relationships. And he is the way he's been able to have guys locked in the face of that tragedy. I mean, we were talking earlier in the show about, how guys in the Niners bounce back in the wake of Dre Greenlaw being injured, or when you were talking about when you were on the A's in 2001, having to kind of immediately bounce back in the wake of Jermaine Dye injuring himself on a foul ball off his shin. That's nothing compared to the kind of tragedy the Warriors have had to go through this year. And, Steve Kerr, he's got 29 games left on his contract, 29 regular season games left on his contract. So he doesn't have a deal for next year. He is a lame duck coach right now. And, looking ahead to this second, half, quote unquote, so to speak, of the season, if this is it for Steve Kerr, Warrior fans really try to take a moment to appreciate just what this guy has meant to this organization.
It's not going to be it for Steve Kerr. I'm not going to do any goodbyes to Steve Kerr right now. This is not it for him.
You don't think so?
He's the best coach in the NBA. Look at the resume. He is.
Yeah. Then why do you think he doesn't have a deal yet then?
I mean, that's not my call.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing I would say, unless you're in the building, unless you're in the room, you don't know what's going on. If you're just going to games as a fan, and fans are right to feel however they want to feel, but unless you're in the building and you know what's going on in practice, you know what's going on in the locker room, you know the dynamic between the players, you know what's being said, what's not being said, you know confidence level, you know injury level. When you're the head coach of any team at the highest level, you know if a guy's soft, you know if a guy's bitching, you got to know if a guy's moaning, you know if a guy's moping, you know if a guy's confident, you know if a guy's not confident, you know if a guy's soft, if he's on the table all the time, you know all these things. Unless you're in the room, you don't know what's going on. And if you're going to criticize a guy that's won 4 rings and it's maybe doing his best job as an NBA coach this year with what he's had to negotiate and navigate through, like I can't criticize. And I've never been in my life, and I feel it's a reason why I was successful as an athlete, of blaming a coach for anything. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people have had bad experiences in high school or college or at whatever level with coaches. So their first card is to blame the coach. Like, I'm going to blame the coach. It's the coach's fault. It's Kyle Shanahan's fault. It's Steve Kerr's fault. It's Bruce Bochy's fault. I did a radio show in 2010 when I fielded calls for 2 weeks on Fire Bruce Bochy. Fire Bruce Bochy, who won 3 World Series. The Giants had lost 9 out of 10 in July. I was fielding calls every single day. And I said, you could call the show and say you want him fired, but who's your replacement? Who do you think is better than Bruce Bochy? So if you want to fire Steve Kerr, and that's your take, or you want to fire Kyle Shanahan, who's better? Who's your replacement? Tell me who's better than those 2 coaches right now. And if you can find somebody that's better than those 2 coaches, come on the show, tell me they should be fired. But if I'm looking at it objectively, there is nobody out there that's better than Kyle Shanahan. There is nobody available out there that's better than Steve Kerr.